Mr. President, I know I express the sentiments and outrage of every member of this body about the tragic events in Israel this past Tuesday where those in a synagogue were brutally slain. It was a shock to all of us. In a synagogue, in a place of worship, people there praying and studying, and their lives were brutally ended. Let me just mention the victims. Rabbi Moshe Twersky, Rabbi Arya Kopinski, Rabbi Kalman Levin, Avraham Goldberg, and a police officer, Zedan Sof. I particularly want to mention Rabbi Kopinski because there is a connection here to Maryland. 3 of the victims had U.S. citizenships. Rabbi Kopinski is a cousin of a distinguished constituent, Judge Karen Friedman of Baltimore. So this affects all of us. I know that first and foremost that our prayers are with the families, and we express our deepest sympathy. I also express our resolve to eliminate such extremists and to work with the international community so there is no refuge anywhere in the world, anywhere in the civilized world for such extremists. And then I would hope that we would all recognize and speak out for Israel's right, indeed its obligation, to defend its people from such brutal attacks. The Baltimore Sun said this morning in its editorial, there could be no excuse, no explanation, no reasoned or even plausible justification for the horrific attack on Jerusalem synagogue Tuesday that left 4 rabbis and an Israeli police officer dead. I know we all believe that statement. There is no justification for such actions. Yet Hamas, and I'll quote from some papers, Hamas, the militant Islamic group that controls Gaza, hailed the attack in the synagogue as a blow against Israel's occupation. Just points out the difference between Hamas and Israel. I've been on the floor many times talking about Israel's legitimate and right to defend itself and Hamas's desire to put innocent people in harm's way. It's our responsibility to speak out. If this event would have happened in the United States, I think we all know what the reaction would have been. So our resolve go with the people of Israel that we will stand by them and that we stand by their right to defend themselves. This is in the backdrop of the rise of anti-Semitism. We've seen it with violent attacks in Brazil, in Tulisa earlier this year, a brutal slaying in Antwerp, Jewish schools, community centers, and synagogues being targets of attack, extremist parties gaining political support with espousing anti-Semitism. We saw that in Hungary and other countries. I want to mention once again the role that this Congress plays in the Helsinki Commission. I have the honor of being the chair of the Helsinki Commission during this Congress. And the Helsinki Commission implements the commitments we made almost 40 years ago, the Helsinki Final Act, and core principles of human rights and tolerance. This is our bedrock principles that in order to have a stable country, you have to have a commitment to basic human rights. And it's not just your obligation, but every country that's part of Helsinki, including the United States, has the right to challenge in any other country its compliance with those basic human rights. And we've made progress. 10 years ago, I was privileged to be part of the U.S. delegation in the Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference was established to deal with the rise of anti-Semitism. And an action agenda came out of that conference 10 years ago. It put responsibility on us, political leaders, to speak out against anti-Semitic activities in our own country or anywhere in the world. It set up an action plan to deal with educating, particularly dealing with Holocaust education, to deal with the Holocaust deniers. It dealt with police training, because we understand that a lot of criminal activities are really hate crimes. And the police need to be able to identify when hate crimes are taking place in their own community. We decided to share best practices by providing technical help to countries to do better. And we established a special representative to deal with anti-Semitism. Rabbi Baker is currently that special representative. But we went further than that. We expanded it to all forms of intolerance, not just anti-Semitism, xenophobia, anti-Muslim activities, because we recognize that the same people who are extremists who deny individuals because of their anti-Semitic acts would do the same against Muslims, would do the same against people because of their race or ethnic background. I was very pleased to see that to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the Berlin Conference, there was a reconvening in Berlin plus 10. Ambassador Powers, our ambassador to the United Nations, led the U.S. delegation. She did a great job. I want to acknowledge that Wayne Henderson, representing the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, also participated, because there's unity here. It's not just the anti-Semitic activities, it's the intolerance that we've seen grow too much in our world community today. The concluding document said that we need to increase our political and financial support for civil societies, and I agree with that. Transparency and supporting the NGOs, supporting the civil societies is critically important. Mr. President, the bottom line is that we must work together to root out all forms of anti-Semitism and all forms of intolerance. Let us work together to make all our communities safer by embracing diversity and recognizing basic human rights.